Hello everyone. Now, before I begin this story, many of you know that we can't say certain words on YouTube, for example, so I have made up a new name, Pavement Pacers. So from now on, you know a pavement pacer mentioned on this channel is a you-know-what. In the less illuminated parts of society, a harsh reality persists. Pavement pacers, often marginalized and stigmatized, are subjected to an alarming level of violence. Research indicates that globally, pavement pacers have a 45% to 75% chance of experiencing sexual assaults at work. This risk is even more pronounced for pavement pacers who are migrants, trans, or of color. The violence they face is not only physical, but also psychological, and the victims are predominantly women. Amidst the grim reality, there are individuals, known as Johns, who pay for the services of pavement pacers. These transactions, while controversial, can provide a source of income for the pavement pacers. However, not all Johns respect the boundaries and rights of these workers. Trent Benson was one such individual, a man, or a John, whose evil obsession with pavement pacers landed him on death row.
Throughout history, there have been people who have committed some of the most heinous crimes fathomable. For those crimes, they have been convicted and sentenced to death. Welcome to Death Row Executions, where we take a look into the lives of society's worst offenders. And now, your host, Air.
Trent Christopher Benson was born on October 7, 1971 in South Korea. Every country has its issues, but since Trent was born in Korea, I would like to give some background information about adoption in Korea during the time Trent was born. Korea was once known as the land of orphans because during the 70s and 80s, they had sent the largest number of children overseas for adoption. More than half of the estimated 200,000 that have been adopted were sent overseas. It has been reported that many of the kids that were left to fend for themselves on the streets had one parent that had passed or an intact family. Research has proven that over 200,000 children have been adopted since the 50s in South Korea, and majority of them were abandoned. Trent Benson, whose birth name is unknown, was found wandering in the streets in 1974. After being found, he was placed in an orphanage and, like many American couples seeking to adopt in South Korea, David and Elizabeth Benson laid their eyes on Trent and decided to adopt him. Trent was not the first child they adopted, so when Trent first arrived in his new home in Foston, Minnesota, he had other siblings waiting to greet him. The Bensons were known to friends and family as being thoughtful, kind, and loving. They were also great parents who made the effort to put their children in extracurricular activities. They also instilled good values in their children as well. Trent had everything going for himself. While attending Foston High School, Trent was a well-rounded student who did well in academics and with sports. He was popular and well-liked amongst his peers. He joined the swimming team and even became a captain because he exhibited great leadership skills. He was competitive and loved track and field as well. Outside of competitive sports, Trent also had a lovely voice and he showcased his singing skills in the school choir. Trent was able to complete 4 years of high school with no known instances of misconduct. After graduating Foston High, Trent decided that he wanted to further his education and attend college. One college he applied to was Minnesota State University, and he was accepted. Who knows if it was someone he met, or if he was dealing with other issues, but after only having attended Minnesota State University for 2 years, Trent got in trouble with the law for the first time. After getting in trouble with the law, Trent traveled to North Dakota and one day decided to go inside of a Macy's store. Instead of purchasing items like an upstanding citizen that he was raised to be, he decided to steal. Stealing, even though he came from a wealthy family with parents that loved him. Things started to go downhill from there with Trent. Who knows if he learned negative things in college, but he formed a lot of bad habits. Sources that were close to him noticed that just like in high school, he was also popular in college, but he was extremely persistent in trying to pick up women. Many noticed that he developed dark and twisted habits though, and he was not trying to communicate with these women in a normal fashion. Despite his particular behavior, he met and married a woman by the name of Michelle Tahoney. By this time, Trent found a job working as a car salesman, so he was able to work on his charisma with many people. Trent ended up moving from Minnesota to Arizona, and while in Arizona, he continued working as a car salesman. Trent and Michelle had a child together, but their marriage did not last and the two ended up divorcing. Trent and Michelle went their separate ways, but Trent won custody of their son. I mentioned that Trent left Minnesota and he left back in 1996. In 2000, his parents followed suit and moved to Arizona as well. They used their money to purchase a beautiful condo. Trent, now single again, decided to move in with his parents. Many people in the community knew of Trent and they respected him as one of their own. Trent was very involved in helping the community prosper, and he would also attend homeowners association meetings. Maybe this was all a facade, because behind closed doors and outside of his small community, Trent was a menace. Instead of dating or hoping for marriage again, Trent began entertaining pavement pacers on a consistent basis. He also enjoyed the occasional strip club. Still living with his parents, Trent left his home and his son one night, and it was a Halloween night, October 31st, 2004. Trent spent hours at a strip club, and instead of going straight home when he was done with the club, he decided to go out looking for a pavement pacer. 21-year-old Alyssa Marie Beck caught his eye. Alyssa agreed to hook up with Trent, so she hopped in his car. When Trent found a good place to park, they got in the back seat and began to have intercourse. In the middle of the act, Trent grew enraged and began assaulting Alyssa because she complained that he was taking too long to finish. Trent then used a ligature to cut off her air supply, and when she was confirmed to be deceased, he sexually assaulted her. When he was complete with his deplorable act, he drove to Mesa, the same city he lived in, and dumped her body in a random alley. Alyssa was days shy of turning 22. She was found the next day, face down in a street by a family of 7. Trent was able to get away with this crime for a while, and as years passed, he was still living with his parents and was financially supported by them as well. In 2007, he proposed an idea to his parents. He wanted to open a small store selling ice cream, candy, water, and ice at the local mall. His parents were happy and willing to help. They funded his business venture, and he named his new store Lindsay Water and Ice. Although everything in life was going well for Trent, his business was doing well, his sexual perversions did not go away. The same year he opened his new store, he would go on to assault at least 3 more women. In mid-August of 2007, Trent, along with a friend who was into the same things as he was, decided to assault a 47-year-old woman by the name of Yolanda and take her against her will by approaching her from behind. The duo drove behind her in a white car, pulled her into the car, and placed a cloth soaked in a chemical that would induce unconsciousness over her face. The men then brought her inside of an abandoned home and began sexually assaulting her. When it was Trent's turn to do the assaulting, Yolanda woke up from her induced slumber. She was horrified to find that Trent was on top of her, and Trent's friend was off to the side watching everything go down and filming them. She said that she saw herself on a large format TV being assaulted by Trent. When Trent was finished, he and his friend left, but Yolanda was too scared or possibly unable to leave, so she stayed inside. Trent returned sometime later, and he was ready for another round. Yolanda laid there helpless while Trent had his go with her. Trent finished and left again. This time Yolanda was alone. She decided that it was her only chance to escape, and she did just that. She was able to successfully leave the place she was being held without being caught by Trent or his friend. She flagged down the first taxi she could find, made her way home, and immediately called the police. Unfortunately, her crime would go unsolved for some time. In October of 2007, Trent met another pavement pacer by the name of Karen. 44-year-old Karen, who had spent years walking the streets at night, willingly got into Trent's car and agreed to engage in sexual activity back at his house. Just like his first known victim, Alyssa, something triggered Trent. Trent did not respond to women and was easily triggered. He and Karen had supposedly agreed on a rate, but when Karen asked for a bit more money after they had intercourse, it angered him. He killed Karen the same way he killed his first known victim, Alyssa. Trent loved intercourse with women who had no pulse, so Karen was assaulted after she had already passed away. When he was finished, he loaded Karen into his car, dumped her body on a random street out in the open, and then ran over her poor body with his vehicle. Although she was dumped in a street and not an alley, police did not find her body until 10 days after she died, but just like his previous crimes, Trent was able to temporarily get away with this crime. A month after killing Karen, Trent walked up to a 35-year-old woman from behind. This woman's name was Melissa. Melissa was minding her own business walking across a lot when Trent unexpectedly used a cord to cut off her air supply. Melissa did not die, but she was unconscious for some time. Like typical Trent fashion, he took Melissa to an abandoned house and sexually assaulted her. Trent left her for dead on a random road, but unbeknownst to him, she survived. When she woke up, a random passerby noticed Melissa and called for help. Melissa told authorities that her attacker had a white car that she noticed before the attack, and he was an Asian man between the ages of 25 and 35. She also believed that he was around 5'8" and had short, dark brown hair. Just like his college days, Trent could not refrain from trying to link up with women, whether it was catcalling or asking them for sexual favors. Trent did it all. Things finally caught up with him, though. Early in 2008, a woman went to the Mesa police and reported that an Asian man in a white sedan continuously tried to solicit her. Instead of ignoring this woman, police passed this information along to detectives because the information sounded familiar. Surviving victims were able to tell authorities that their attacker was also Asian and drove a white car. Detectives made the decision to put Trent on surveillance. They wanted to make sure that he was not their serial attacker that had been described by multiple women. Detectives trailed Trent and found out that he had frequented a local bar. One day, they observed Trent coming out of his favorite bar smoking a cigarette. After finishing his cigarette, Trent flicked it on the street, got into his car, and drove off. Authorities made sure that Trent was no longer in sight before retrieving the butt of the cigarette so they could send it off for DNA testing. All of the victims found had semen in them, so detectives were hoping Trent's DNA matched any unsolved cases. Just their luck. When the DNA results came in, authorities learned that Trent's DNA matched 4 unsolved cases. Police immediately arrested Trent and put him in an interrogation room. Trent was arrested on May 14, 2008. While being interrogated, Trent admitted to killing Elisa and Karen. Trent believed that he had successfully killed Karen, but detectives informed him that Karen had survived. When police informed Trent that his DNA was found in one more victim that was found dead, he denied it. This victim was the Hispanic female by the name of Yolanda he killed. Trent said that the only reason his DNA was on Yolanda was because he did hook up with a quote-unquote Hispanic chick, but he did not kill her. Do you guys believe Trent? Do you guys think maybe it was his friend that killed her? Why would he admit to killing the other women and not Yolanda? Let me know what you guys think. All of Trent's friends and family members were shocked to learn of his murder charges. People in the community spoke out about how he was such a good human being. His ex-wife was even interviewed, and she said that although things weren't the best emotionally, she was very shocked that he would ever be capable of committing murder. There were more women, though. There were times he picked up homeless women and offered them money in exchange for sexual favors. When women refused, he would assault them. Trent continued denying attacking any other women, even though his DNA was found on them or in them. Trent's trial began in 2011, and he was charged with 10 counts of first-degree murder, sexual assault, and taking someone against their will. To be more specific, 2 counts of first-degree murder, 4 counts of taking someone against their will, 3 counts of sexual assault, and 1 count of attempted sexual assault. During trial, Trent's defense attorneys tried to argue that yes, he had a good life in America, but when he was in South Korea, he was subjected to a lot of hardship, and those were the most important stages in his life where he needed to be shown love and care. The defense tried hard, but Trent was still found guilty on all charges in August of 2011. He was sentenced to death for the murder charges, and he was sentenced to 135 years in prison for the assault charges. To date, Trent is sitting on Arizona's death row. Previously on Death Row Executions, I told the story of John Jacobson Jr., aka Skylar De Leon, someone who was guilty of killing 3 people and was sentenced to death for it. If you missed it, click this video to check it out.